This is Lorraine Watry, and this is part 7 of a watercolor demo of water lilies. In the last video, I had been working on the water lilies themselves, and these are just some close-ups so you can see how far along I am. And I'm doing a little bit more for that second water lily there, probably darkening some edges or putting in some more of the center of the water lily. And the water lilies were a purple color, and I think I used cobalt blue permanent rose mix for the purple, and then the centers and maybe some of the darker parts were with some quinacridone magenta added. And it's fun to start seeing the water lilies go in. I'm now more focused on doing the foliage that will be on top of the water, the lily pads and the lilies themselves. I still have some more to do on the background water, but I decided to take a break from finishing that up and get some more of the water lilies themselves in. I'm working on a lily pad there, and you can see I have some kind of orange edges on that water lily. Some of those lily pads had some color to them, and I'm always looking for those kinds of things when I'm doing foliage so that the foliage has interest, that it's not just a flat green or a flat whatever color. And the stems of those water lilies are going in now, and I want one side of the stem to be darker than the other so that it looks like it's getting hit with sunlight. So it's a little bit hard to tell there maybe, but now I'm lifting a little bit so that I can get a little bit of light on that one side, and then I put some more dark on the other side. So maybe you can see that a little bit better. Same thing on that one. And it may look like I just did that stem and that I'm reaching over it and touching it, but because of the time-lapse video and the video being sped up, the stem is probably dry at that point, so I'm not actually touching wet watercolor. I'm not sure what I'm adding there, maybe either cleaning up an edge or adding a little bit of darkness here and there. So the bottom of those stems were a little bit darker because they were right next to the water. They were probably wet, and I am putting in the stem in the water as a reflection. And when you have reflections of things in the water, generally they'll be a little more muted. They won't be as bright in color, and the reflection of the stem will be slightly lighter than the actual stem, which is a dark value. Working on that third water lily. And it's a lot of doing layers, so I may start with one color and then decide that I need to darken a petal after I've put in other petals, and so I will keep going back and adding glazes or layers of paint to that. Plus I'm also waiting for an area that I've just painted to dry, so that's why I probably was working on the water lily pads back behind it. Now I've come back to work on it again. And you can see I have places in there that I've left white, and that's because the light is really shining on parts of those, and I want the lilies to look like they're being hit by light. So I switched to a smaller brush because I'm working around those water lilies. I want to make sure that I'm taking my time, and in the small areas of the water lilies I'm keeping those petals clean and not getting color on them. And if you saw on that last water lily pad, I have some yellow green and then it goes into more of a blue green, so changes of color. Lifting a little bit of color off of the lily pads right in there. Sorry you can't see that edge there. It's always hard to tell where my camera is taking the pictures when I'm painting and I can't look through the lens. Working on that next stem. I think that's probably ultramarine and maybe some quinacridone, magenta, maybe a touch of burnt sienna in that mix, just to neutralize those two colors just a little bit. The burnt sienna will neutralize them, make them a little less intense. Now the water lily pads, I'm putting in the first washes of color on those, but I'll probably come back and adjust them somewhat if I need to, so that they look like they're separated from each other a little bit. I think that's probably mixes of cobalt and different yellows, Aureolin, New Gamboge. There may be a little bit of ultramarine here and there. That's French ultramarine blue. I also sometimes will mix in a little bit of manganese. I think that little section of turquoisey blue right there, that might have been manganese. Either that or peacock blue. So I'm lifting that side of the stem to make it look like it's lit. Some of the lily pads have kind of a burgundy edge to them, and that's what I did on that one. Putting in a little bit of the peach color that was reflected into the water. And that's also a color that I had pre-mixed, so you'll see me reaching over to my left hand. I have that color in a film container, and I had it ready from the background water because I knew that I was going to need it later in my painting. So I mixed the colors that I wanted in that film container and just kept it so that when I got to this foreground part of the water, that I could then use that same color. Please continue to follow along, and there are 10 parts to this painting in total, and I hope to have them all up soon. And if you would like to see the completion, please continue to follow along. Thanks.